Morning, everybody. How are you? Glad to be back after a much needed break. Mark came out, had some fun, and now I'm back. So it's our first live show. I was going to go live yesterday on April 1st, but I guess there was some kind of a boycott or something going on. So I wanted to kind of honor that boycott and kind of stay off the airwaves, just to show YouTube that, look, we're not going to get pushed around anymore. We're pretty much done with that. And they're going to lose revenue if they keep picking on people that are free thinkers. So I wanted to put that out there, say good morning to all of you. It's morning for most of you around the world. Mark and I made a pretty amazing discovery, and that's what I want to share with you guys today. So that's why I came onto the main channel, so that we could talk about that. We're not going to be on here like for a super long time, but I wanted to go over some of what we found. This is simply fascinating. What we have is something deeper to the meaning of what happened in Genesis with Cain. And it seems to point towards, I guess you can call it a diversion from God's original plan. Now, we've talked a lot about how we had the change in the actual physical makeup of Adam and Eve, that something happened in their physical makeup after the fall of man, that Eve experienced pain and she experienced birth pain. So these were physical changes in her anatomy. Also, Adam began to sweat. It said that he would basically work the soil by the sweat of his brow. So there was some kind of a change in the way that we existed, a physical change of our anatomy. Reproduction, I believe, also changed the way we reproduce. Now, I'm going to get into that and explain it. It doesn't mean that you're bad for reproducing. It just means that this was not God's original plan. It was almost like we were altered and turned into like animals or something. And we started reproducing like the animals reproduce. And there's not much difference between a human being and an animal if you really are honest about looking at these things. So let's go back into Genesis 1. And of course, we all know these scriptures. Adam knew his Eve, they call her Kawa here, that's her Hebrew name. She conceived and bare Cain and said, I've gotten a man from Yahweh. Now, in looking at this word from, some interesting things open up. This word from is eth, and it doesn't necessarily mean from. When you look at the Strong's Concordance, you can see here's the word eth. This is actually the Old Testament Hebrew Lexicon Dictionary, not the Concordance. And it says probably from, but this scripture being so important needs to be looked at deeper. Here they show a pictograph, and I'm going to read this to you because this is very important. Again, we're looking at the word from the Lord, okay? It says here the pictograph, ox is a picture of an ox. The cross is a picture of two cross sticks used to make a sign or mark. Combined, these pictures represent an ox moving towards a mark. So if you think about how an ox plows a field, they're explaining here that this word eth basically means that there is this viewpoint. There is a cross at the end of the field used when plowing a field with oxen, and the plowman drives the ox toward the distant mark in order to keep the furrow straight. So there's so much more to this word eth or from than meets the eye. And it seems to give us clues about deeper meanings. Not that this stuff didn't happen, and not that God wasn't talking about the ground, but there's more to it than that. I believe this tilling of the ground had to do with the seed of Cain, the actual bloodline of Cain, as well as the ground. So it says here, a traveler arrives at his destination by following a mark, which is that cross, this cross image here, which is the cross Christ would be crucified on later. You see how all this starts to tie together. Christ was the pure seed, Cain was the bad seed. So it says here, the traveling toward the mark, destination or person, the arrival of one to the mark. So it's like a coming together. A you is an individual who has arrived to a me. the coming towards a mark, a standard or flag with the family mark hanging as a sign, the plowing of the field, driving the oxen to the distant mark. Plow point, they call it. Now, when you think about this, we know that Abel was the keeper of the sheep. Okay, we know that Cain was a tiller of the ground. And so we have this juxtaposition. Abel, the keeper of the sheep, he was of the good seed. He was with Christ, the lamb, sheep, flock. These are all like the more godly side of it. Cain being a tiller of the ground, the connotation is of like reproduction, sexual sin, rebellion against the sheep of the pure bloodline. And so this is where we see this enmity start to arise. Cain was the first murderer, but it goes on because in the New Testament, Christ says, you are of your father the first murderer. And when he's talking to the Pharisees, okay? So when we look deeper into this word eth, it holds a much deeper meaning. We know that through the woman, the serpent entered the world. So the mark Cain probably received was the eth, the word commonly translated from the Lord. That was probably the mark, this cross-looking thing. And this was the 2 cross sticks to make a sign or a mark so that the farmers could make the furrow straight. And it also means against. If you look down in here, you see that not only does it mean going towards the cross, but it also is against. Let's do a word search for that so you guys can see that. Towards is against. See this? Plowshare, coulter, sign, against, with, upon. So we have a precedent now in which this word could be translated as against the Lord. Now, this is crazy because it goes on so many levels, it's almost hard to explain. So you might have to watch this video a couple times. When this furrow is dug, okay, with the plow, as it's being pulled through the ground, that is almost a reproductive type of description, okay? So you almost have the furrow being like the phallic, you have, or the plow being the phallic, and the furrow being the womb, hollowed out, okay? The seeds dropped in. Now God tells Cain, after he kills his brother, he says, the ground that you till will be cursed, not yielding its produce. So nothing will grow in the ground. So what did that really mean? What are the deeper meanings of that? Well, the word produce, let's pull that up. Go down here. The word produce can also be translated as lizard. So if we read this again, it could say, your lizard will not yield, it will not grow, which is the serpent. Come down to this part here. It says here, and now thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. See, this is all about the blood. Abel's blood was crying up to heaven. Okay, the pure blood. It says here, when thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. Here they translate it as strength. But the word is koach, which could also mean produce, but it can also mean a large lizard. Now, isn't that interesting? Because Cain is of the serpent seed, in my opinion. This is my belief, that he actually was mixed with the serpent seed. So in looking at this word, strength, it could also mean a large lizard. So the ground will not yield large lizards. And we see that today. The serpent seed are not in huge numbers. Their seed has not reproduced. That's why they interbreed. Because that strengthens them, but it also helps them to quote unquote stick together, right? And so you get this crazy, way that this word can be translated. Here in Leviticus, they even translate it as chameleon, which isn't a very large lizard, but there you have confirmation that this could be talking about the serpent seed. Make sure we're still connected here. Right on. So we have this furrow that could represent the female womb through which sin entered the world. Okay. And Cain's seed of his furrow not reproducing well, not yielding the serpent seed. And then later in history, we see Abraham, whose seed was blessed. He was the pure seed. And God saying that his descendants would number in the sands of the sea and the stars of the sky. We did some videos on the sands and the sea and the stars of the sky. And it's amazing because when you look at grains of sand, they look like stars and galaxies. We could pull that up in a second here. It's crazy because these grains of sand look like stars and galaxies. Grains of sand. And God knew that when he told Abraham that your seed would be like the grains of sand and the stars of the sky. How did he know when you can't see galaxies with the naked eye? But yet, here we are. You have these spiral mini seashells that look like mini spiral galaxies. You have all of these different types of, they look like nebula, star clusters, gas clouds. Here's a really good example of some microscopic sand particles that look like spiral galaxies. They didn't have microscopes to see on the microscopic level these grains of sand, nor the galaxies on the macroscopic level. But God knew. This was what proves God. These are the kinds of things atheists drives them nuts because they can't explain how God would make a comparison to the sands of the sea and the stars of heaven, knowing that they look very similar to one another. Now, let's keep going with this. So now we begin to understand that the curse of the ground really meant the curse of Cain's seed, the womb of his generations moving forward. Oh, I lost you guys. There we are. And also that God would not bless Cain's seed. And because Cain's seed was going to try to eradicate the holy seed. And that's exactly what he did. First, he killed his brother Abel. And this went on through time. The Canaanites attacking the Israelites, trying to ruin the seed of Christ to come. And so the seed of Seth, which was the second born son, or I guess third born after Cain and Abel, became the correction of the curse. His line would then establish Abraham and the whole lineage all the way down to Christ. So we see how this fertility applies to the land and the womb. So you have barren land and you have a barren woman, right? And when we see that Christ's seed yields salvation from the cross, which remember that word eth, from the Lord, means this distant cross used to make straight furrows. So now this gives a whole new meaning to the narrow gate. The gate is narrow. It's like a furrow. Okay, that word from or against. Okay, and so you have this mirroring as well. The word can mean exact opposites of what we're told it is. They're saying it's from the Lord, but it's really against the Lord. And maybe that was done on purpose so that we could all understand this duality world we live in, the seed against the seed. Everything's in opposites. Now, the Egyptians, of course, were the serpent seed line. Okay, they were the blue bloods. They were the ones that held God's holy seed in captivity. It was like Egypt was pregnant, literally pregnant with God's people, okay? And then when God delivered them, like a delivery, right? When a child is born, they went out through the Red Sea. Now, the Nile is shaped just like this furrow, okay? This ditch that you dig with a plow and an ox looks much like a furrow. It also looks much like the Nile Delta, shaped like a V, okay? Which also represents like the shape of the womb, okay? So you have, it's like a holder. It actually holds something. And so then what you have is the serpent seed of the Egyptians establishing themselves in the Nile Delta, which is shaped like this furrow, imprisoning God's holy seed, basically pregnant with God's holy seed, the Hebrew Israelites. But then God delivered them from the dark seed. That is the amazing thing. They were born again. What do you mean? Well, they went through the Red Sea. It was parted. In other words, the water broke. And when you think about a womb, it's full of water and blood. And isn't it interesting that Christ's side was pierced, and out came what? Blood and water. He was divided, the same way Adam's side was divided when he basically gave birth to the woman through the miracle of God. So there's something about this side piercing. Now, this goes on because the Hebrews were in the wilderness for 40 years. Well, when a child is in the womb, they gestate for exactly 40 weeks before the woman gives birth to a child, a human child. So there's all these overlays, which are just, you can't explain them away. There's too many of them to count. Now, let's go into some of these other windows I've pulled up. Close this. Now, this seed and applying it to good and bad people, this is not new. This goes on in the Bible several other places. Here's the parable of the wheat and the tares. It's the same story, you guys. The enemy came in, that's the serpent, and he sowed his tares among the wheat. This is about reproduction. This is the duality of two different seed lines. They all grew up together, according to the parable of the wheat and the tares. So they couldn't just tear up the tares, right? You have to let them grow together. And that's exactly what happened. All of our blood of humanity was mixed together with the serpent. Now we've gone down through the ages, thousands of years since the beginning of man. All of our seed have been mixed together. So you can't just tear it all out. You have to wait till the harvest. There's a story with Solomon and two women. And in the middle of the night, one woman steals a baby from the other one. And Solomon says, oh, just cut it in half. Give one half to one, go one half to the other. That's basically an analogy of this same parable of the wheat and the tares. It's the same story retold, okay? Parable of the wheat. And so basically Christ was almost quoting Solomon, because in that story with Solomon, he knew that the true mother would rather have the child, she'd rather lose the child and save the child's life by allowing the other mother to have it. And that's exactly what happened. And that's how Solomon determined who the true mother was. But make no mistake, this dividing of this child, cutting this child in half, it was basically an analogy of this same exact story, the parable of the wheat and the tares. This is fascinating because not a lot of people make these connections. And they mean something because it points back to this infection of the human race that occurred with Cain. So I got a picture here I'm going to pull up because I think we just figured out as well, Mark and I were brainstorming all this, what this double cross means, okay? This is crazy. Let's pull this up here. What do we have here? This is Genesis 4. Oh, I think I did that twice. Let's do this. Okay. All right, so here you have this mark, and this is what they call it. This is the word eth. You have this mark, and Then you have the ox. So what I have pictured here is the OX. This is the ox, right? And imagine that this ox is pulling a plow. And the plow is then moving the direction toward this mark so that this ox can make a straight line. That's exactly the picture that you're getting. So you go from this mark, which is the mark of the beast, Christ carrying his cross up the hill. It was an X, but then when the cross was put upright, it became the target that he was aiming for. It also became the way to salvation. Okay. So you have the X, Christ being crucified, his beast body being crucified, releasing all of us from the curse. Now, the second line here you see beneath the cross, obviously, is the horizon. This is where Horus comes in. Horus, the horizon. And Egypt keeps you down in the dirt, in the cursed dust. You never get to the cross because they want you down here in the material realm. So this is how that thinking can double cross you. And this is where you get the double cross, which is the satanic cross, okay? Because it represents this lower part is the horizon, keeping you down in the dirt, the cursed dirt, right? So this makes a story, which is pretty fascinating. You don't want to end up double crossed and in the grave. Now, there's scriptures in the Bible talk about do not plow with an ox and a donkey. And so Mark and I dug into this. We're like, what is that all about? Well, in looking at ancient Egypt, they used donkeys. That was the prominent animal, even though they worshiped this ox. The animal that they used for their labor and travel was the donkey, because there was large distances between these Egyptian sites along the Nile. There was a lower Nile and the upper Nile. And so what they had to do was they had to try to find a way to migrate. The best way to do that would be with a donkey, not an ox. Okay? So these donkeys were very prominent. So when the Bible says, do not plow with an ox and a donkey, really what it's saying is it's mixing the two bloodlines. Once again, oxes are specific more to the Hebrews. They were the ones using more of the oxes. We looked in the Bible, and a lot of these sacrifices the ancient Hebrews did were these oxes. And they also, these oxes were held in high regard. They had almost some of the same rights as humans did in terms of, you know, if someone killed someone else's ox, like they would get in big trouble for this, okay? Or stole an ox or whatever. And now you know why Jesus rode in on a donkey, right? Why? Why would Jesus ride in on a donkey? What could that mean now based on what we just discussed? Well, my opinion is he rode in on a donkey because he was demonstrating that he was here to offer salvation to all hybrids and pure bloods. He was the conduit connecting those who believe in him. There was now an exit strategy for both sides, blue bloods and red bloods. This is why I tell you guys, some people, you know, want to criticize this channel and, oh, yeah, everything you're talking about is division. It's division. No, it's not division. This is the most unified message you could ever imagine. Doesn't matter what your blood is. Blue blood or red blood, it doesn't matter. That's why Christ came. This just answers all the other questions. It answers how these people maintain their power over all of us because they've interbred themselves in these bloodlines to deceive us, maintain control and power. They also have higher learning, higher technology, higher intelligence, fallen angel intelligence. And so they're able to deceive us on all these different levels using the media and all this stuff. So Adam was changed. He had to till the ground, right? So Adam had almost the same curse as Cain did. He was told in the book of Genesis that he would till the ground by the sweat of his brow, the thorns and thistles, right? With his altered body, his beast body that sweats, because apparently the connotation there is before that, he didn't sweat, right? Why would God say that you're going to sweat if that was just normal to do anyway. So it's basically suggesting that something changed. We are altered. And the act of physical sex was part of that curse. There must have been a different way we reproduced before that. So the ground that they talk about, this ground, this dust, was more, I believe, about a new form of reproduction, which is the beast mode, the beast dimension, okay? And again, I believe all this happened actually on a physical level as well, but there was so much more to it than we're reading about. And God can do that because he's amazing. He can take this stuff and, put it on different levels of understanding and different dimensions and deeper meanings because he's God. And we should never put that past him, that he's not capable of that. Let's go back in here and see what you guys are up to. All right, so let's go in the chat here. You guys have any questions about this? I just wanted to get through this presentation with you guys and let you guys know what's going on with this. See if now this is the Cairo. A lot of people believe that Cairo was named after the Cairo, Egypt, right? And it shows an X and a P together. So let this load up here. This is the Cairo. Now, this is often a symbol of Christ used by the Catholic Church. But I believe there's more to this. I believe this Cairo has something to do with this letter, or the KH, Cain, Ka. It's the same sound. Okay. And here you have the ox. It's an X and a P. This almost looks like it digs a furrow. This almost looks like it could be a plow pulled by the ox. So if anything, this almost is like a mockery of Christ because it's the beast, right? Not the upright cross that releases us from the curse, in my opinion. So yeah, this stuff's pretty fascinating. All right, what else do we have here? Let's pull up these notes, see if I missed anything. I think that's about it, you guys. All right. So let's look in the chat here, see what's going on with you guys. Good to see everybody. You guys are up early this morning. Here's some truth. I got a bunch of videos set up to upload starting I think tonight, tomorrow. Some really cool stuff that I decoded on the Titans. This movie came out called The Titan, and it's about this guy and this team. Well, it's actually a team of soldiers that basically it's the whole catastrophic, the world's ending, we got to find another place to live. And they're like, instead of terraforming planets, why don't we terraform man? So they genetically modify this team of soldiers so that they can just basically go out into space and breathe on planets with very little oxygen and have superhuman strength. I mean, it's got transhumanism written all over it. So I decoded the first part of that. So I wanted to let you guys know about that. So that'll be uploading. So back on the horse, and we're going to get it done. Now, there's some crazy stuff going on out there on some of these other channels. I know Call for an Uprising got into it with this guy that was mocking Jesus. Now, this channel that this guy was mocking, or this Jesus character, this channel, he has like a lot of subscribers, and it's basically making fun of Christ. It's like the most disturbing thing you could ever watch, and making fun of all of us. And so Call for an Uprising went toe to toe with this guy, and apparently this guy replied and did like a video mocking a Call for an Uprising. So it's like war. Now, in these situations, it's very difficult not to get upset about this stuff, but it's like you have to wonder, you have to wonder why YouTube lets them get away with mocking Christ in every way, shape, and form you can imagine, mocking Christians, mocking people who are believers. And then, but yet, if you even say the word CRISSISACTORS, your channel gets deleted. Okay. So this is the kind of stuff. I mean, the kids from that event, they're saying the word, they're allowed to say that word now more than anyone on YouTube. And they don't get deleted. But do you see how this works? So there's definitely double standard still going on here on YouTube. Okay. So yeah, that's part of the plan. Thanks, Epic Z. I think we're gonna try to all gang up and report this person. What I'm afraid of though is I don't want this backlash to come back on Call for an Uprising, and then that guy sends all of his people to flag Call's channel, because Call's already been through the ringer with YouTube. He lost his channel. He never did get it back. And he's got a couple backup channels that he's trying to rebuild, but it's been pretty crazy. So to lose another channel, that would just be not cool. So that's what's going on with that. I want to just put up the word to show your support. I believe Call's one of the real deal. He's one of the soldiers for God, standing up every single day and fighting the enemy. And that's all you can do. We can't accept this stuff as normal, you guys. And the minute that we accept this stuff as normal, the world's just going to descend into chaos and sin, and it's just not right. So, when you're on the cutting edge of truth like that and you're slaying the dragon, things can get pretty hairy. It can get pretty nuts. You're going to get attacked like fiercely. You're going to get deleted and attacked. And that's exactly what's going on. So that's what's going on with that. Appreciate each and every one of you guys. Let's give some shout outs. I always forget somebody. It just always happens, you guys. So if I forget you, please don't be upset with me. Gabriel, Rebecca, Joanne, Epic C, Catilla the Hun, Tommy, Shirley, Mathis PT, Epic, Allie. Who else do we have here? Joanne, did I already say Joanne? Yeah. So much love to you guys. What else do you guys want to talk about while we're on here? It's morning. You guys are probably up now. Have your coffee. And I don't have to put chickens away for a while. The two chickens are now out in the yard. They're scratching in the dirt. They're outside the fence, the two new chickens. So all is good in the world in France for the chickens. No more pecking going on at all. It's like kind of weird now because I just watched this pecking going on for like a week. I was concerned about these new chickens. And now it's like no pecking at all. So the girls are kind of coming to their own and they're just chilling. So we have unity in the universe once again. I'm glad we made it through the whole Easter and all that. It's always a tough time because of all the lies and deception and all the people being asleep. And then you got these family events that you're kind of obligated to go to, and you got to put on a smile, and some of you have to do the Easter egg hunts and all this stuff, right? So I completely understand and I get it. I'm not living in it anymore, so it doesn't really affect me in terms of social pressure, but I totally get what's going on. So prayers to all of you guys for having to deal with that, and I'm glad you made it through it. And let's see, let's close up some of these windows. So I still have to finish up Titans. Let's do this. I'll pull up a screenshot of this. Hopefully this thing on this little lesson on Cain made a little bit more sense. Cain was not, he was cursed, but he was given a chance. God put a mark upon him. Interestingly, that mark may have looked like the cross. And he told Cain, if you do good, you'll be fine. Because it's not until you give in to sin that it will be crouching at the door waiting for you. Okay. So Cain was also, God said, if anyone kills Cain, they will be cursed. So you're not allowed just to go and kill people because it's about the harvest, right? Which is what it says in Matthew. You got to let everything grow up together until the harvest, because you can't tear a person apart who's mixed with two different bloodlines. You have to let them battle it out, good and evil, within inside of them. and choose good, just like God told Cain. So hopefully this puts another layer onto this. You know, there's a lot of different variations on the serpent seed, and sometimes I think that some people have done this doctrine a disservice by reading way too much into it and bringing other factors into this to almost discredit it. And so that's why I tell people, when someone says the serpent seed, don't just automatically assume you know what they're talking about. Listen to what they're saying, because there could be factors about what they're trying to say that have nothing to do with this. People will try to pull all kinds of stuff into this. Some people will say the human race is damned. Some people will say that anyone that has serpent blood is not going to make it to heaven. None of that's true. Okay. Some people say that we ain't fallen angels or whatever. That's not true. Okay. And sometimes I get lumped in with all of that, and that's where some of the attacks come in on this channel. Okay. So let's see. Here's Titan. I got it pulled up. I think I'm about halfway through it. They haven't quite made it to Titan yet. They're still training these guys and injecting them with all this blue blood and stuff, and they're starting to like develop all these symptoms. They're impervious to cold, which is exactly what hemocyanin-based organisms can do. These crabs and centipedes and lobsters, all these blue-blooded hemocyanin-based organisms are impervious to cold. That's one of the qualities of a copper-based blood. Okay. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some copper references in the remainder of this film. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm going to be looking for it, because they would love to do that. They even inject them with this bluish blood. And she looks at the blood under the microscope, and the blood turns from red to blue. It's unbelievable. It's sitting here right in our faces. Okay. This bloodline thing. Very few people want to admit what's going on. And you can't say that, oh, I just watched a movie and got the idea, because we've been talking about this before they even depicted it in the movies. So that's what's going on with that. All right. Yeah, I can't wait for Westworld to come back out. I'll be decoding that as well. And that's about it, everybody. Denise asked, do you have good friends, supportive friends of friends? Yeah, Mark's here. He comes, and that's cool. He comes probably once every 2 or 3 months. It's a long trip for him. He's got to do like an overnight ferry, and then he's got to drive 4 hours. And, he's kind of torn between two worlds, because he's got his family back there and stuff needs to get done. I've been through that, when you got kids and a wife, and you're like torn. You're like torn between two worlds. Whenever you have to go away for anything longer than a few days, it's just hard on the family, So, but Mark does the best he can, and he comes out. So usually we get to spend some time and hang out, and that's about all I can ask for out here. I have peace. Believe it or not, peace is a huge thing that a lot of people take for granted. Just having peace. Not having to wake up every day and go into a job and get on a train or go on, fight traffic and have to deal with a manager who at any given moment could decide they don't like you and fire you. I don't know about you guys, but I've been laid off and fired so many times in my life for no reason. And I'm I got a little bit of PTSD from it. Like I get real squirrely around someone who has power over me. And that is what the workforce represents, and it's gotten even worse. Corporate America is brutal, especially the line of work I was in. Very competitive. Everybody wants your job all the time. You're always being forced to perform some magical, unattainable goal that nobody can ever get to, and they just decide who they're going to let slide and who they don't, and they just keep you in a state of fear and panic, and that is very bad for your health. It's not the way we're meant to live, and if you could all help it, if you have to take a pay cut to have peace in your life, I would recommend it to my last dying breath. Literally, it's a whole different reality when your goal for the day is, I'm going to slay the dragon. That's what it should be about. Slaying the dragon, fighting the enemy that's keeping control over all of us and making us all miserable. I'd rather do that and fight that kind of control and power that people have over us than to join in with it and give into it and be a victim of it. and, take a 90% pay cut, and that's fine. I'll do it. I don't need anything. But see, that's where they get people, because people want things. They think independence is making money. Oh, now I have money to go do whatever I want. Well, yeah, for what, 52 weekends out of the year? I mean, really? If you can't just disappear for 2 weeks or a month and do whatever you want, that's not life. Being tied to a 9 to 5 job where all you get is your weekends off and a few hours in the evening to rush home in traffic and throw a dinner together and say 5 sentences to your kids before it's time to go to bed. That's not life. It's not what we were meant to do. We're meant to be doing other things, like what Jesus did. What did he do? He walked around all day. He didn't have some manager breathing down his neck. He had the Pharisees he had to battle it out with on a verbal level, but they just walked around all day and talked about God. And so that's what I want to do. I want to pick up my cross and follow him. So I'm glad everybody made it to the show this morning. I know I started a little early. Apologies. So let's go back in the chat here. And a lot of people are afraid to do that because they don't have their independence. They think that independence is making money. That's going to allow me to go on a nice vacation. Well, guess what? I'm on vacation all the time. Every day is a vacation. Tomorrow I'm going to go fishing. I'm going to hop in my car and I drive over to this little river that's supposed to have German brown trout in it. I'm going to grab my GoPro camera, and it's supposed to get up in the 60s tomorrow, so that ought to be pretty cool. It's about a 2-hour drive. Pack me a sandwich and bring my camera and hopefully get some awesome footage of me catching some amazing French-German trout, right? And I was a little shocked. I was with Mark. We went into they said it's kind of crazy here in France because they sell things out of like bars, but the bar doesn't really feel like a bar. It's like the bars are multi-purpose centers. Like you can buy lottery tickets there. Yes, they have lottery in France. You can buy, you can pay your water bill. You can get your fishing license at the bar. You can get a cup of coffee and some like basic food items. So we went in and I was like, look, I want to fish. And the license was almost 150 euro, which is about $160 to catch trout and salmon. So all of a sudden, let me close some of these windows up. I think you guys are having some technical difficulties. Let's close this. Could be my connection. So Mark and I are looking at each other. He's like, I ain't getting a license. I go, I don't blame you. Let's see. And I go, well, for $160, $70 for the year, that means that when I throw my pole in the water, that should mean that I should catch fish in like 5 minutes, right? Wrong. So we went to a couple different spots. We threw out, and we waited like half an hour. I had some night crawlers, had really good baits, really good pole setup, and we got nothing. And he's like, dude, I can't believe it costs $180 just the chance to catch a fish. Unbelievable. So there's that. So, but I got a different spot that I know has fish in it, and the weather's going to be good, so I'll be able to like stay out pretty much for like most of the day, and I'm going to just try to nab something, and I think we got a pretty good chance at it. And I told Mark, I said, look, if I don't catch anything this season, like at least like 5 fish, I'm not buying a license next year, and I'll just find something else to get into. Maybe I'll get into this wood shop and start cutting pieces of wood and making cool things. I don't know. I'll have to find another hobby while I'm here in France. But I'm a pretty good fisherman, so if there's any fish in there to be caught, I'll catch it. So yeah, again, thanks for all the awesome birthday wishes. You guys I wish I would have been like around to like maybe go live and talk to everybody with Mark, but it's like we had emergency after emergency, like the shower broke, and Mark had to get in there and like fix it, and just little things here and there. And So that's what happened. Let's see here. Yeah, should be free, right, Sean? Here's what happens. God is like angry right now. He's slow to anger, but he's angry because the enemy has stepped in the middle of our relationship with God and this earth. It's not the enemy's, it's not his right to step in the middle and control all of us and separate us from God. Okay, God, we're supposed to be experiencing God through nature. It's part of the life cycle. It's like it's like this. Everybody knows how a pollywog turns into a frog, right? Now, let's say you take the pollywog out of the water and you cut its tail off. It's not going to be able to turn into a frog because it needs that tail to swim around, to evade predators. You're interrupting the lifestyle of that frog, okay? And it's the life cycle. And that's exactly what the enemy's done to us. He's put an interrupter in between us and God so that we can't fully experience God's blessing. We can't fully experience the cycle of life. We can't fully experience things that seem to be chance that are really divine intervention. Like let's say you're on the verge of starving in the forest, and all of a sudden you come across, patch of wild berries. And after that happens like 100 times, you realize that that wasn't an accident. This is how God blesses you. This is how He finds a way to like save you and pull you out of situations, and you actually can see miracles when these things start to happen. I don't know how many times. I'll tell you about a miracle. I had a buddy. He was fast asleep, but we were friends for like 10 years, I think. And he was always too drunk to like know anything or see God or learn. He was one of those guys. He would get his social security check and he'd go to church when he felt like he did something wrong, and he would give the pastor, $100 bill or something, right? And he made sure everybody saw him put this $100 bill in the basket. And then he'd come away, and then he would expect God to bless him. He's like, I supported God in the church, and now God's going to bless me, right? And I'm like, it doesn't work that way, dude. God doesn't need your money. He needs actions. And you giving away your money to a church and a pastor ain't helping anybody. All it's doing is creating more Joel Osteens. We get disconnected. So you got to wonder about this stuff. Hold on, let's let this connect back up here, you guys. Okay, there you are. And so I would tell this guy, I was like, dude, God's talking to you in your face. You're not seeing you're not hearing him. You're not hearing him. And I don't know how many times I was out on the river with this guy. And, during the summer up at, I don't know, some of you know the Bakersfield area, there's the Kern River, the mighty Kern River. And they stock that river with lots of trout, and there's camping. If you're ever in that area, it's something really fun to do. I wouldn't recommend going in the middle of summer. I'd try to pick like a warm spell during like the fall or maybe even late spring, and try that instead. But we would go up there and camp, and we'd be standing in the river, and I'd hook up a fish. Well, he at the exact same time the fish would hit my lure or my bait, he would get a hit, and he was literally standing about 30 yards to 50 yards away from me, upstream or downstream. Now, how do those two fish know to bite at exactly the same time? That's not an accident. This hasn't happened just once or twice. This happens in rivers. It's happened in oceans. I've been fishing with him in the ocean, and it's not like trout don't travel in schools that are that big, 50 yards from each other. It was some kind of electrical network, an unseen network of communication these fish have between each other, and this could go miles catch back up. Uh-oh. All right, I think we're back. This guy was dealing with alcoholism, and I told him, I said, "Look, dude, I go, you're standing on the edge. You know, you're on the edge right now. You have a decision to make. You know, it's either, uh-oh, lose you guys. I said, either you're going to get it together, or you're going to go down a very dark road." And he was having some problems dealing with the loss of his marriage. You know, he found out his wife was cheating on him, and she was like 20 years younger than him, which was part of the problem. And, you know, he got to a certain age, and then all of a sudden, she was kind of had grown out of him, you know, and this is what happens. Let's see there. Let's fix this. Sorry, guys. Technical difficulties. All right, I think we're back. Right. And no sooner had I said that, some drunk guy from, I don't know where this guy, he was like from Australia, comes walking. We were standing on a 200-foot cliff. Any of you that have been to Shell Beach, California, you know about those cliffs at Shell Beach, California. It's near Pismo Beach. That's where I used to live. I used to live there, and we'd fish those cliffs at least once every week, once every couple of weeks, right? And it was kind of an epic thing because we would throw this bait down off of this 200-foot cliff, and then we had these long poles, and we'd pull up these fish from that far down, and you know, on these rocks and seaweed, and it was just like an epic battle. We get people watching us. It's amazing. There's a lot of people like hated us, right? Because we didn't like fit into the landscape, because there's like multi-million-dollar homes right on that cliff, right? And right across the street, there's a couple of guys in sweats and, you know, just pulling fish out, and they're a beautiful coastline, right? They can't stand, even though the Native Americans did this. But see, this is where the world's headed. They got people brainwashed into thinking that there are certain things we shouldn't be doing. And it's sad. It's really sad. And we get heat from these people. They're like, they just wanted us to be gone. They didn't want us there. And so then we would pull these fish out. Well, anyway, some guy walked up. He was really drunk. And I was like, wow, that kind of looks like my friend used to be, or was, or is at times. And this guy almost fell off the cliff. And this was right after I just got done telling my friend about, hey, you're at the edge of a cliff right now. So he didn't get it, though. I'm like, dude, this is a message. You know, this is God trying to tell you something. And so it's just crazy, all these things that happen in this life. And what the enemy's trying to do is surround us. He's trying to like cordon us off, surround us, corral us into this existence where we don't see or feel God. That's what his stated goal is, so that you can wake up one day and deny God. Okay. You know, I hear stories from people that have turned their back on God. And the most common story that I hear is, God didn't save my mother or father when they, you know, got sick with cancer and died, and they suffered. And if there was a God, he wouldn't let these people suffer. And I thought to myself, if I was dying of cancer, the only thing I would be concerned with the loved ones around me, is I would be telling them, if there's anything that you do when I die, it's not to stop believing in God. So then I wonder, the people who are dying of cancer, if they're not, you know, communicating that message to the loved ones around them, and let's say they're atheist, of course that's going to reinforce the atheist ideology. But can you imagine what a testament to a faith that it would be if a person that was dying of cancer and suffering never, ever forsake God? Can you imagine how many more people would come to Christ when someone never turned their back, even when they're suffering? And that reminds me of the story of Job. And that's exactly what Job did. Job was on death's bed, and he could have easily turned his back on God, and he never did. I think that's why God put that story in the Bible, to put an answer to all of the things that people say about God, you know, when they try to mock God. God cannot be mocked, and it's all going to get handled in the end. And basically the theme of Job is, no matter what happens to your body, You have eternity. This is just a dot. It's a blip on the map. We think we know everything. We think, we can't, a little bit of suffering. We think that it's the end of the world and we get angry at God when he's got eternity waiting for us on the other side. It's the enemy that causes death. That's who all the death and destruction and pain and suffering is attributed to. God didn't have anything to do with it. But we're in a galactic courtroom and everything has to play itself out. And that's going to require some suffering. And so this is what we're dealing with, you guys. And in the end, it's all going to shake itself out. Just never, ever turn your back on God. Listen, if God wasn't real, all these people in these movies and television shows and all this stuff, commercials, they wouldn't be mentioning God every single chance they got. I was just watching this thing. This movie shouldn't have anything to do with God, right? The Titan, right? But it does. He talks about making man in his image. That's right out of the Bible. God says, I made man in my image. Well, this guy says, I'm going to make man in my image. Okay? They keep repeating these biblical themes. If they didn't believe in the Bible and they didn't believe in God, they wouldn't be repeating the Bible over and over and over again. And atheists watch this stuff and it goes right over their head because they don't have any knowledge of the Bible. They don't know. They're listening to basically a retold Bible story. The Titans were the fallen ones, the first generation of the seed of the fallen. These were the big ones. These were the ones that could have been 20 miles high. Okay. And they had superhuman powers. These were probably the Titans. And here they're retelling the story. Okay. So when it all, we're going to be talking about this on the next live show. This is a CNN article talking about how the government is using your child's DNA. The name of the live show is going to be called Help, the Government Has My DNA. I think I've got it on the backup channel. So check that out. If you're not subscribed to the backup channel, do that now. Enterthestars Reloaded. And this is a 2010 article. They were talking about this, about the government storing your children's DNA in biobanks and then running genetic tests on your child's blood sample. And this woman said she got notified that her child had cystic fibrosis and she didn't even ask for the test. And now that child is marked. So it's going to be harder for her to get insurance and all this different stuff. Now, back then they had laws where insurance companies weren't giving insurance to people with pre-existing conditions. Supposedly Obamacare took care of that, but you get the point. Who wants the government knowing your medical conditions based on blood samples you didn't even give to them? So we're going to read through this article. That's going to be tomorrow, I believe. I think I have scheduled for tomorrow or the day after. So this is very important because it goes back to targeted individuals. Anybody talking about targeted individuals needs to be talking about blood samples. Okay, the two go hand in hand. The targeting happens from birth, you guys. Any of you had the experience where your doctor tells you you have a really rare blood type, or they say that your child has a really rare blood type, and then it's like they don't want to talk about it, and you're like, well, what does that mean? I have a rare blood type. And they either like harass you to donate blood, or they say, oh, you can never donate blood. Too many people have had that experience that I've talked to. And that means something. That means that there's a lot more to this blood thing than meets the eye. If they're storing all this stuff in biobanks and then selling it to pharmaceutical companies to run crazy Frankenstein experiments on it, I mean, what the hell are they doing? They could be cloning you without your knowledge. You could actually physically be cloned from your blood sample that was collected when you were an infant. And that's a scary thing. Okay. I mean, can you imagine running into yourself? I mean, that would be like the weirdest thing ever. I was doing some research on twins that separated at birth through, adoption or whatever. And I found that in rare instances, now these weren't identical twins. These were like fraternal twins and or brothers and sisters that didn't know they were brothers and sisters because of adoption laws, right? And privacy. And they ended up marrying their brother or sister or their twin. And then they like found out later that they were like brother and sister. I mean, that is creepy. So this stuff happens. Okay. This whole cloning thing and this can happen very easily, you know? And who knows, they might have grown a clone of you not knowing that they were cloning you or not caring, not thinking you'd ever run into yourself. But what if you did? That would be crazy. So it's very important we talk about that and raise awareness about the loss of our privacy from the very day we're born. Government knowing everything about you. Sometimes I think one day I'm going to get a knock at the door because I'm living outside the matrix. And it's driving them nuts because they can't really do anything about it without raising attention to the fact that they're watching all of us, right? They can't just knock on my door because they don't do that here. I mean, unless I were to commit like a serious crime here in France, they can't really deport me, right? Because then it would expose them that like they're surveilling me and like for what? People would ask for what? What did he do? Oh, because I think outside the box. Because I speak out against the matrix and the structure. And so they can't stand it. I'm one of those anomalies. I'm like a renegade. And they're looking for a way to try to take me down, but they can't. So they send all these weapons at me, but none of the weapons prosper. As the Bible says, no weapon shall prosper against you. But you got to be on the right track. You got to be on the right path. You got to be trying to live your life the way God wants you to live your life. And so, you know, the last thing that they want is me beating a drum, telling everyone, hey, there's a way out of the matrix. I mean, I know I'm not completely out of the matrix, but the last place I want to be right now is in America. Now they're requiring in America, okay, are you ready for this? Or are you sitting down? If you want to travel to America now, Dabu did a video on this, you have to show your last 5 years of social media, all of your social media footprint. You have to disclose the United States government in order to get a visa to come to the United States. And that is simply chilling. That's scary. So America wants to go on and on about their freedom, we have freedom, right? To me, that is a million times worse than banning Muslims from coming to the United States. You know, this ban that Trump did? You're requiring someone to submit their social media background. That is like, that's like submitting your health information. Something that should be completely private, they want to see. Now they're going to say it's all under the guise of national security, right? But that's hogwash. Okay, it's complete and utter hogwash. If they want to get rid of, it's almost like a big setup, right? So they got everyone on social media, they made everyone feel safe, and then they're sitting there collecting all this data on people. And then now you got to submit that data to move around the world, They could just as easily pass a law like that here in France. We saw what happened to that girl Southern or whatever, went over to the UK, got deported. They had their eye on her the minute she went into the country, okay, because of her social media footprint, right? And so if they're doing that to foreigners who come into the United States, what are they doing to the American people? They're watching the social media, American government. Why wouldn't they? They're bold enough to ask it from people coming into the country. They're definitely watching it. So my opinion is, I'm not going to hide. I'm not going to try to change the way I am from speaking out. Yeah, we have to be careful what we say on YouTube, but I'm going to keep saying it just in a different way. And no algorithm they create can conquer free speech and freedom of thought. The minute they try to do that, then all bets are off, and it's all going to be exposed. So that's the story on that. Also, Russia launched this missile. I got a video coming out on that on this channel and the backup channel. It's called Satan 2 is the name of this missile. And thanks to the subscriber who sent that to me. A lot of the stuff that I do videos on comes from you guys. And this missile is called Satan 2. So I did some research into what's really behind this missile, and it goes even far deeper than just Satan. It goes very, very deep. There's actually links to Iran and the Nephilim, giants. All this stuff is linked into the name of this missile that supposedly can fly over the Arctic, where the U.S. will be defenseless to try and stop these missiles. It's outside of the U.S. defense system. And that's why you've seen Russia with this presence up in the Arctic. They also said they can fly it over the South Pole as well. So there's something really weird and strange going on, and they're doing it in plain sight. Most people don't have the discipline to follow it all and to watch it and understand what's really going on. Most people are locked in the matrix. They don't have time to research this stuff, nor do they care. They're too busy worried about holidays and, we get going jet skiing on the weekend with their family. Nobody really cares about what's going on. So they get away with just doing this stuff in plain sight, and nobody ever connects the dots. So that's what's going on with Russia and this intercontinental ballistic missile. So I'm going to cover that on a video. It's coming out pretty soon too as well. So what else? It's afternoon for me, so I'm kind of winding down. It's almost 5 o'clock. I'm going to let you guys go. Appreciate each and every one of you. Hugs to everybody. Stay warm. Hopefully I get some fish footage tomorrow for you guys. Let's hope. If not, I'm going to be very upset. So I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Much love, everyone. Take care and be safe.